Whoa, hey, relax. Easy on the dislike button there, and spare your keyboards from the thrashing of your fingers. Let me start by saying that I do not think momentum is an inherent requirement to making a Sonic game good. This will not be a video about how Sonic is essentially nothing without momentum, okay? Sonic can be good without momentum, and I aim to have a nuanced discussion about momentum's initial importance to this series. Now, if we're on the same page, and you're willing to hear me out, then let's get started. Look, whether you like it or not, momentum was a pivotal part in the initial success of Sonic. Sonic's primary objective as an IP was to give Sega a mascot capable of rivaling Nintendo's Mario. To do that, he needed a hook of his own, something to make him stand out gameplay-wise. Inspired by his attempts to speed through levels in the original Super Mario Bros., Yuji Naka set out to create a platformer focused on speed. Of course, that couldn't be all there was to it though, otherwise it'd just end up essentially being a racing game where you just happen to be able to jump. Enter momentum, the key difference between Sonic and any other mascot who happens to be able to run fast. In many platformers, your player character typically moves at either a single set or multiple set speeds, ignoring advanced movement tech and maneuvers and what have you. Sonic, however, not only gains more speed as he maintains a run, but can also exceed his own set top speed by taking advantage of the in-game physics system and level geometry. It cannot be ignored that this was a selling point and defining trait of the Sonic games in the Genesis era. While it was not at all required of you to get through the game, players with the will, know-how, and skill can optimize their routes of each level by becoming familiar with the level design and engaging with the game's physics to blitz through the game quicker with each playthrough. While Mario was what you went to for simple yet engaging 2D platforming with a plethora of creative concepts and ideas being thrown at your way every level, Sonic was who you went to for high-speed platforming that was easy to pick up but tricky to master. Emphasis on was. Let me pose a question here. What is the core of a mainline Mario game's gameplay? Well, that usually depends on the type it is. If it's a standard 2D platformer, you can expect the usual of a level-hopping adventure going from point A to point B. If it's a linear 3D title, you can expect that same type of progression from going point A to point B, but with a more expressive moveset. And if it's an open sandbox 3D title, you can expect a collectathon where you can generally tackle a lot of the game's challenges in your preferred order, with some of the most snappy and expressive Mario movement. Notice how there's a general framework of what to expect when going into a mainline Mario game? Now, let's try to apply that logic to Sonic. If it's a 2D Sonic game, we can expect an act-to-act, zone-to-zone structure with some special stages sprinkled in there, with a selection of multiple characters most of the time. I feel like the 2D games have the most consistent track record to go by, so it's fairly easy to set your expectations when it comes to them. Then there's the 3D games. When it comes to 3D Sonic, there are more variables to consider. This is a sorting I made of the 3D Sonic games in terms of their structure gameplay-wise. Now, before you start screaming at me, no, I do not consider Sonic 06 Adventure 3, or any adventure game for that matter, but you cannot deny that it is very adventure-adjacent with how it goes about its story, gameplay, and multiple playable characters, so that's why I have it where it is. Anyway, notice how there's hardly a consistency between releases? When you think of modern Sonic, unless you're closed-minded and think all modern Sonic is Boost, there's hardly any guarantee that what you'll be getting is what you may have grown accustomed to, let alone what you may have enjoyed from your previous experiences. Even when there is a consistent formula, don't count on it sticking around for long. Got a winning formula with the adventure games? Throw it away for something new with Heroes. Then, once they return to an adventure-esque formula again with Sonic 06, once that game got the immense backlash that it very much deserved, they took all the wrong lessons and tried to stray away from anything and everything Sonic Adventure-esque. Aw, shucks. People didn't like our unfinished, unpolished, buggy mess of a game?
I can't get off! What is this? I can't get off! What is this?
Huh. They must just be tired of the adventure formula, so I guess it's all kaput. Surely it has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the game itself. So they flat out abandoned the adventure formula, looked at what Dimps did with the Rush games and said to themselves, we could do that. And thus, with Sonic Unleashed, we were given the Boost formula in the 3D games. This formula would follow throughout colors and generations, and people dug it. Unleashed aside, unfortunately, but Sonic Team knew people enjoyed the Boost formula. Surely they must have known that with the critical success of Generations as well, but one game later, they threw that away for something new as well with Sonic Lost World. And when they did give the Boost formula a shot again with Sonic Forces, and that game also got the backlash it deserved, they went on to try something new once more with Sonic Frontiers. I'm beginning to notice a pattern here. They have a winning formula that people enjoy, throw it away for something new that gets mixed reception, go back to the winning formula and completely butcher it, and once they see the feedback, they abandon the winning formula for something new instead of refining it and, I don't know, putting it in a game that doesn't totally blow, maybe? My point is that Sonic doesn't have a consistent control scheme or move pool that players can grow comfortable in knowing like Mario does, because the core design and gameplay loop of a Sonic game is constantly being switched up, which is something I would be more than fine with if only every Sonic game wasn't made to be mainline. It's time to open that can of worms. Every Sonic game developed by Sonic Team being mainline is a bit ridiculous. Let me get into why. It's limiting for them to have to fit it in somewhere in the Sonic timeline, and I feel that it also limits the creative risk they can take because of how everyone is going to be looking at it as the next step in the Sonic series. I wish Sonic was in a spot where lots of subsidiary playstyles and series were a norm long accepted, so that multiple different iterations of fast-paced gameplay could appeal to different people. Instead of a playstyle with potential being tossed away after appearing in one suboptimal game, experimentation could be more encouraged. I feel like people would be more accepting of different iterations of Sonic gameplay if they weren't indicative of the series' future by all being mainline. I feel that a great example of this is the Super Mario 3D World situation, which is the best 3D Mario game, by the way, fight me. Super Mario 3D World, when first revealed and released, was unfortunately looked at and critiqued way more harshly because of it falling short of what people were wanting at the time. The Wii U, the console 3D World debuted on, was Nintendo's first console capable of outputting HD graphics, and people were anticipating a shiny new open sandbox game to take advantage of that. So, when they were met with a follow-up to Super Mario 3D Land of all things, yeah, their disappointment is understandable at least. But in a post-Super Mario Odyssey world, where Super Mario 3D World has deservedly received one of the best ports in recent memory, people are looking back at acknowledging 3D World as the incredible game it is, and the two different takes on 3D Mario are able to coexist both as mainline titles. Sonic seemingly doesn't have that same luxury, and part of this is on Sonic Team because it seems they don't know what to do with the series just about as much as we fans don't know what we want from it. My point is that the Super Mario Mainline series has a set identity, multiple set identities in fact, that players can have a set of expectations for when going in, depending on which branch of the mainline a particular game may fall under. Sonic, meanwhile, doesn't have that. With Mario, it feels like multiple branches of the mainline are able to be accepted by fans and critics alike, but with Sonic, with the mainline series, it feels like there's a this way or that way type deal to it. It's either classic or modern, adventure or boost, Hotel Trivago.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Couldn't help myself on that one. Sonic, the mainline series, lacked identity, is what I'm trying to get at, and I've concluded an identity perfect for the series. It's one it used to have and should have kept this entire time. I'm gonna say it. I mean it, I'll say it. Here goes. Momentum. Again, Sonic doesn't need momentum to be good. However, momentum was a key component of what made him stand out, what made him unique in terms of gameplay and the gameplay loop. Sonic, at least in part, was a physics-based platformer. You didn't just go fast and finish levels quickly simply because Sonic inherently did that. Speed was a reward for understanding level design and how Sonic's roll physics worked. That should have always remained the core of Sonic if you ask me, with other playstyles being built off of that core foundation. The adventure formula, boost formula, open zone formula, they can all work on top of what could be the core foundation of Sonic. Frontiers especially being a case in which people noted how much more fun the game was once the spin dash and momentous physics were added despite the majority of the game not being built with that in mind. Sonic could have, and in my opinion should have, always been the series you went to when you wanted physics-based high-speed platforming. That could have been the series' identity this whole time, but that identity was cast aside a long while ago, and nowadays is something people like to treat as a neat addition. A neat addition when this used to be Sonic's whole forte. Look, I'll even scream it from the rooftops. Sonic does not need momentum to be good, but what exactly is he without it gameplay-wise? I remember when Frontiers first dropped, there was a review which stated something along the lines of Sonic's travel controlling like the fastest modded horse in Breath of the Wild, and this saddened me more than it admittedly should have, because deep down, I knew I couldn't really dispute that. What is it that separates Sonic's speed from The Flash's, or My Little Pony's Rainbow Dash, or a modded horse in Breath of the Wild? Momentum. His ability to gain and maintain his speed through his environment. Seeing that loss of identity to time is a bummer for me, but if Frontiers is anything to go by, then maybe things are beginning to turn back around. Anyway, I've said my piece on the subject, and hopefully you've heard me out in full up until this point, because again, I am not saying, not at all, that momentum is the end-all be-all of Sonic. Why am I even trying? Someone's gonna leave with that impression anyway, so, let's give them something else to be upset about. Sonic Frontiers